Welcome back to the Blue Screen Brothers. This is the third episode of MS Grab for Dummies. And I have a dummy. No, I'm the dummy, and I have a non-dummy with me. That's Marius.
Thank you.
Uh,
So today we're gonna do what we said last episode, where essentially we want to create a script that can do the getting of the token without requiring any input from us. So the way we do that is we use an app registration. So we start in Azure Active Directory, and we need an app registration here. So let's just click new registration. Call it episode 3.
Yeah. You can use another name if you want to in your environment, but we will recommend episode 3.
Yes, this is mandatory.
Yeah.
So you have different options here. Let's stay with the default now. We're just running in our own tenant, but it is possible to do this in a multi-tenanted environment where you want to access many tenants with the same application, for example. Yeah, redirect URI and things like that we don't need to worry about because we're not redirecting anyone anywhere at all.
Yeah.
So now we have an app registration. There are a few things that we will need. We will need this tenant ID.
Yeah.
So because that explains our script essentially where to authenticate or to which tenant. So let's start by copying this. And I've actually prepared something now.
Yeah.
So
isn't that cheating?
That's cheating, but yeah. So in my script, I need to complete this tenant ID variable where you can see it being used one place, and that's down here. Because this tells the PowerShell script where to get the token from. And when talking to Azure AD, you need to say which tenant, essentially. So next, we will need this client ID or application ID. I'm so glad that they used 2 different names for the same thing. That's always a good thing. So we're gonna copy that as well, like this. So this will be sent in the body, as you can see here. So I've created a dictionary containing 4 different parameters. So I have the client ID. I will need a client secret. So that is essentially the password for our application. You can also use a certificate rather than just a plain secret. Of course, it is better using a certificate, but it's way more difficult as well. I have a blog post explaining how to use Azure Key Vault for storing the certificate and then having a PowerShell running in an Azure function that accesses the key vault with a managed service identity. And there's so many things that you can do to be more secure than just typing your client secret in your script.
Yeah, but because you don't, the script can get lost. Somebody can get access of a script, so you need not to contain secrets.
Correct. So I can show you the simplest trick here, but we'll just get it working first. Then I say scope. Here I can say the different scopes I want, but right now I just say this .default scope. And that is a very useful scope because it will essentially just get all the permissions that are granted to the app. And usually that's what you want. You can also limit your scope. So let's say I have access to user read all and user read write all, but I only want to have, or I only need a token that can read users. Then I can define here in this scope string that I only want to read users. Don't give me the write permissions. I don't want that right now. That's not useful to me. It's best practice to keep the permissions as low as possible.
Yeah.
And then the grant type, that's client credentials. And client credentials essentially means that I have a client, which is my app registration, and I have some credentials for that client. And when talking about credentials, I have 3 different types. I have certificates, as I said. I have a client secret, which is what we want to use now. Let's just call it test and valid for 6 months and copy the value. And I have federated credentials. So this is useful when running things in things like GitHub Actions. So I also have a blog post explaining this more in detail, how you can use the federated credential when running in things like Azure DevOps pipelines or GitHub Actions. But right now, client secret. So we'll just type that in here. And you can see that I'm just sending this body as a post to this token endpoint. So if we now were to run this, we will see that this runs successfully. And my token variable contains this access token.
Yeah.
So if we now were to do whatever we did last time, let's just copy that from somewhere. Not that at all, but let them instead do, because this has taken so long time that my PowerShell has closed, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So let's try to access the same endpoint. What do you think will happen now?
Last time you didn't have permissions, but I guess you now have created the permissions already in the enterprise app. Or have you forgotten to give the enterprise app?
Exactly. Because that was where I was going, or did I? So when you look here now, so we build the same header as we have done before. This authorization bearer, and then take the token value.
Yeah.
So you can see that if I do like run this, you see that the authorization header is bearer space and then the value of the token.
Yeah, the same as we saw on the browser.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So if we run this now, boom, insufficient privileges. So you were right, we didn't have permissions. And the reason is, as you said, we didn't grant it any permissions. So when granting permissions, you can see here that I have this managed application in, I don't remember what this actually says, but yeah, it's impossible to say, in something.
It's a well-known secret.
Yeah, if I click here, I will get to the enterprise app. So by default, it will, when creating an app registration through the Azure portal, it will create an enterprise application for me. Yeah. This can also be called a service principal. That's the same thing. Yeah. This is what is actually granted the permissions, but we grant it through the app registration page, which is super confusing. Yeah. So what I do on the app registration page here, I go to API permissions, and this is what defines which permissions my application wants to request, essentially. Yeah. So I can say add a permission, Microsoft Graph, application permission. That's different from last time. So last time we worked with Delegated. You can do this here as well. But now we're going to use application permissions. So I can take user read write all, type this here. You can also just navigate through these. You can see in graph there are many permissions, but you can find this user down here. Yeah. So you can find user read write all, add permissions. Are we done?
No, you need to grant admin consent for Contoso. Yeah.
Yes, correct. So, because what I've done now is essentially just saying that in the manifest of my application, I have added this thing where it says the required resource access. So I have just added to my app registration, which is the definition, that this app needs use read write all, but I haven't actually granted the permission in my Contoso Azure AD. And the reason why this is the way it is that I can have this app registration in one tenant and not wanting any permissions in my own tenant, but I'm using this app towards tens of other tenants.
Yeah.
So, but now we're working in our own. So let's just grant. You can see grant successful. And if I just run this still will not work because my access token has not been renewed, because the access token contains the permissions it got when it was signed. Yeah. So what I need to do is to run this here again. Sometimes this takes a few seconds before it works, but not this time. So now you can see I actually get this result. And we get result.value. And I can do whatever I want with that. Does Out-GridView still exist in PowerShell 7? Probably. Came here. Yeah, so I can, for example, this is the result from Microsoft Graph. Yeah. Using application permissions. And our last trick before my battery runs out is that this value here, of course, should not be stored in the script. Yeah. Yeah, that was just for the example now, right? So yes, but what we can do, let's say we copy this value, and I say something like secret equals read host as secure string. I type it and enter. So now I have this secret as something called a secure string. Yeah. If I say convert from secure string, I will get this strange thing out, which is useful. So I send it to my clipboard. And what I can do here now is that I can use the convert from secure string as plain text. Let's see if I remember. Secure string is I think I'm typing this wrong. Of course I am. So what the simplest or the simpler way, let's do that instead, because I don't remember how to do it. I can create a new credential with just a random username, and then I need to have a secure string as my parameter. Secure string, let's just call it that, and we'll have a credential like this. Yeah. Then I need my secure string, which is again convert to secure string is what I'm doing, of course. String is this thing. Did I type a bit too much? Yes, I did. Let's get this back on my clipboard. Like this. Yeah. Now, when doing this, you will see that this actually works. Convert to secure string from this strange string here. Yeah, so actually that's becomes a hash of your access string, right? Yeah, it's an encrypted hash based on my current Windows session. Yeah, okay. So this string is only usable for me on this computer. Okay, perfect. Yeah. And now I can create this credential. So now I get a credential object instead. Yeah. I can now use something called get network credential of this. This will have the password, as you can see here. Yeah. So this is just a means of getting this password based on this. Yeah. So this will actually now decrypt this key into a secure string. It will just create a credential object, and that's just in order to so-called unmarshal this secure string into something useful, which is this value here. And then I will call this get network credential.password, which is how you get the password from a credential, essentially.
Yeah.
And now, if we run the same exact thing, we'll see this again returns all our users.
Perfect.
So if I were to say this is a .ps1 file now, I can simply run it and it will work on this computer.
On this computer, nobody else.
If I copy it to another user on the same computer or my own user on a different computer, this string will need updating. So then you will need to just do this read host operation that I had here, AsSecureString, convert from SecureString, which will return this type of value. And that is a very simple and easy way of storing secrets on your computer for automation tasks without requiring key vault or certificates or all kinds of different, more difficult methods.
And if they needed the more difficult methods, they could go to your blog, and your blog are
goodworkaround.com.
Goodworkaround.com. That sounds like a good workaround if you need it.
Yes.
Yes. Excellent. I think we have learned a lot about MS Graph. So, Marius, thank you so much for your effort.
No problem.
Yeah.
Thank you. Cheerio.
See you around.